appreciate that. I did want to introduce a couple of people that I brought with me today. Brittany Ragosa. Brittany is one of our newer members in the office, and then Melissa Stein, who is finishing up her practicum for her master's. She actually graduates in May, so yay for Melissa. So the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, if you've been on campus for any amount of time, just a few years ago we were known as Student Judicial Affairs. And across the nation, we've tried to get away from that because students also have judicial matters that they're dealing with the courts, with the police departments. And even though we work hand in hand with them in some cases, that's not our particular role. So I always like to start off talking about our department as to how we basically fit into the food chain here at ASU. So as you know, we have President Crow, and then one of his senior executive vice presidents is Dr. Jim Rund, and some of you may know Dr. Rund. He is the head of a department called EOS, or Educational Outreach and Student Services. In a lot of universities, it's simply student affairs, but here we have to make everything difficult with way long names for things. So Dr. Rund is the head of EOS, and under him comes the Dean of Students, among a whole bunch of other departments. So the Dean of Students on this campus is Dr. Kevin Cook. And so there's a Dean of Students on each one of the campuses, and it's a similar process now, and this has all just really changed and become kind of uniform in the last year or two. So the Dean of Students then has several associate deans of students who handle, again, a whole bunch of things. But one of the associate deans of students on this campus, Dr. Ron Hicks, he has oversight for the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities. And our immediate boss is Jennifer Stoltz-Krasnow. She's the Director of Student Rights and Responsibilities. Again, if any of you have been here for a few years, Dr. Deborah Sullivan was over the department for a long, long time, so you may recognize her name, but again, we've had some shake-ups since then. Yes, a lot of directors, way heavy up here. So our office, the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, we are primarily concerned with the Arizona Board of Regents Student Code of Conduct. So the Board of Regents, as you know, is the governing body that's over ASU, NAU, and U of A. And so it's their code of conduct, not just ASU's. And so any changes that happen to the code have to go through them, and it has to go through all the lawyers for all the different universities, and so as you can imagine, it takes a while if any changes are coming about. But the code of conduct, just to put it very simply, and I have some handouts for you in reference to this, is a list of 26 behaviors that pretty much the Board of Regents has said are not acceptable behaviors from students. Very first one that's on the list is in reference to plagiarism, cheating, and well, it should be, we're a university. And then some of the other behaviors that we frequently deal with are alcohol-related matters, drug-related issues, weapons, thank goodness we don't deal with an awful lot, but we do deal with that. Sexual misconduct, which could be anything from rape to indecent touching or exposing. Computing laws, because there are times when people have downloaded materials that they shouldn't have downloaded. Everything from the music industry to pornography. So the code of conduct are these 26 behaviors, and they're categories of behaviors. Because as you can imagine, each one of our campuses here at ASU alone have different personalities. Like if you've ever been out to the West Campus, it's very similar to a community college feel out there. They're still relatively small, everybody knows each other, the class sizes are smaller. Over at Polytech, they actually have housing out there, I believe 600 houses, since it used to be Williams Air Force Base. Plus they share space out there with Chandler, Gilbert Community College, Maricopa County Community Colleges. So there are things that happen over on that campus that we might have to deal with, such as domestic violence situations or child abuse situations that we normally don't have to deal with here on the Tempe campus. The downtown campus, since it's in an urban setting, has all of its own issues because of the fact that you've got this whole great big city and all that that brings right around it. And then of course you have the Tempe campus, which has approximately 58,000 students on any given day in 1 square mile, and you can imagine the havoc that that can cause. So not to mention all the thousands of visitors that we have in and out, faculty, staff. So we've got a city right here in 1 square mile with every service that any city could have. And so of course we can have all sorts of issues that happen. We're a complaint-driven department, meaning we don't go looking for a student to get into trouble. Something has to trigger us becoming involved. And we refer to it as becoming keepers of knowledge. Once information has come into us, we have to make a determination what we're going to do with this information. I'm pretty proud of us in the fact that we have a pretty quick turnover rate for getting through particular cases. Some cases, based upon the nature of them, like if something comes in that's involving a fraternity or sorority, and we've got 60 to 80 people we have to interview, it can take us a whole lot longer than if we have someone who's in the halls with an alcohol violation. And obviously, a sexual misconduct case is going to take us a whole lot longer. But whenever we receive word, we call it a complaint, but a complaint can come in many different ways. It could be, we have an electronic system called Advocate. It's a database. And every single day, our community assistants who work in the halls, the CAs, they write up reports if something is happening with a student. On the rest of the campus, it could very well be that a professor is having a problem with someone and they shoot an email, or they go up through their college and the college is advising us of something. It could be that a student has been arrested for something and a police report comes over. I liaison with ASU PD every single week, and so we have a really good relationship with them. And then we also have touch points with Tempe PD, since we're right in the surrounding area here. And then the other campuses have contact with the police departments who are around them. So it could very well be that they're sending us information. Sometimes we hear something in the news, and you know, if it's an ASU student, they broadcast that and say, ASU student so-and-so did such and such. And so that's how information comes to us sometimes. It can also come in anonymously through a hotline that ASU has set up for compliance, where you can just call into that number and give the information there. And the auditing department actually makes sure that it is routed to the appropriate area that needs to handle something that might come in, so that they're keeping track and nothing just falls through the cracks. So at any rate, once something comes into our office, then we're making a determination how we're going to handle it, because not everything that comes in is an actual code violation, but it might need to be addressed nonetheless. At the beginning of every fall semester, we receive numerous complaints in reference to the preachers who are out on the mall. I think you probably know which ones I'm talking about, with their big signs and, you know, and it's almost as if they're inciting students to react in particular ways. And many people are very offended by what the message is that's being delivered out there on the mall.
I mean, sometimes they have screaming matches on Hayden Mall, you know?
Exactly, yeah. And so, but we get an awful lot of complaints. But we're a public institution. Anyone's allowed to be on campus. There are certain areas, if we allow one group to be able to be out there, we better be allowing other groups, whether their message is something that we like or not. As long as they don't impede somebody's ability to be able to get through, as long as they don't touch anybody. You don't have to like the message, but we have to allow them that freedom of speech. So therefore, there are things, you know, we always let the police know when we're thinking that it may be getting close to crossing the line, so that they can go have an educational chat. But again, speech is one of those issues, as hateful as it may sound sometimes, or as obnoxious as it may sound, is something that we have to be very careful in addressing, because unless it is something that is threatening in a particular manner, and you can threaten without cussing at someone, but unless it's threatening or puts someone in a fearful position that they can't just easily walk away from, then we'll address it with the student, but we can't necessarily charge them under the code of conduct. So part of our job is going through everything that comes through every day to determine how we're going to handle something. Now, with plagiarism and a lot of the other things that happen within the college itself, ASU is kind of unique in the nation in that because we're so large, we have it set up that the colleges themselves are handling most of those issues. Where we become involved is when a student's behaviors become so disruptive that it's that people are feeling threatened, that students are uncomfortable in a classroom. We've become involved when we've found out that students are selling tests. We have become involved, I remember one case where somebody threw something and it almost hit a professor because he was upset and acting out. Sometimes you have students who might have some disability issues where as part of what's happening in their behavioral pattern come across as kind of scary. And so, so there are times when we will get involved because of those things. But how many of you are aware that within your own college, you have a route that you can go through in reference to having someone removed from your class? You don't have to wait for us to be involved. Okay?
We seem to get conflicting messages about that, and that's why I wanted you to kind of talk about that.
You bet. I always liken it to being Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. If she only knew that she could click her heels, she could get so much more accomplished. And one of the handouts that I brought for you has policy and procedure in reference to handling disruptive persons, and especially within the classroom setting. Because some of the classrooms or some of the colleges really have it down well. W.P. Carey, CLAS, those are two of the colleges, Herberger, three of the colleges that I can think of right off the top of my head that really have a pretty good pattern for how they're handling disruptive students and the backing that they give to the instructors if they're having that disruptive student or someone who, you can't get down to teaching because this person is just continuing in the classroom. So there are ways to handle it internally where it never even has to come to us. In a lot of those cases, what they do though is they'll call over to our office and they'll ask if that person's ever been on our radar. And I am more than happy to always check that out and see, because sometimes you may not be the first person who's reported something with this student. And it may very well be that it's been an ongoing situation that we've been paying attention to, but there wasn't quite enough for us to do something with it. And now this piece of information may be the one more piece we needed. Excuse me. We can't mandate counseling. We can mandate an assessment if the behaviors warrant it, because we're all about behaviors in our department. You can say that somebody was disruptive, but I need for you to be able to explain to me what you mean by disruptive. Like, were they throwing something? Did they keep getting up and down out of their chair? Were they bothering other students in the classroom? Because just to say disruptive, that doesn't give me enough to go on. Imagine me bringing a student in my office saying, the professor says you were disruptive. What do you mean? I don't know, you were just disruptive. If you report a student because of language, I realize that some of it is pretty rotten stuff. I mean, we see it on a regular basis. But we need to know exactly what it is that a student said to you so that we can make a determination what's happening with this student. And also, is there enough then for us to mandate an assessment? Because we can mandate assessments for a couple of different reasons. One, if we suspect that there's an alcohol or drug-related issue. If we're looking to see if there's a tendency for threatening behaviors. Sometimes just to see if if there's something happening with this student where maybe they're not equipped with some pretty basic life skills. And so a lot of what we do is getting students in front of where there's help available to them, because maybe they're acting out because of different things that are happening. You know, we deal with an age group for the most part where there's the onset of a lot of different mental health issues, such as bipolar, schizophrenia. And so this enables us then that opportunity to get in front of a student and see if we can get them plugged in with disabilities resources, with campus health, with the wellness center. And we can take a holistic approach with students. I know my staff gets tired of hearing me say this, but 78,000 students at ASU. Our office deals with about 4,000 cases a year. And out of that, we only have about 30 to 40 suspensions or expulsions. Okay? So suspensions and expulsions don't happen lightly. It's when that student really needs to be removed for the welfare of the campus community, that student being considered part of that campus community. And a suspension is a period of time when they would have to be gone and probably have some conditions for return. So again, I may have mandated an assessment, a mental health assessment. I can't make that student go to counseling, but if they ever want to come back, they're going to have to show me that they got the counseling and that they now can, there's a reasonably good chance that they can be successful here. So I can't force them to do it, but if they want to come back here, they're going to have to show me that they took that step. Expulsion means that they don't ever get to return. And if we suspend or expel from ASU, they also cannot attend NAU or U of A because, again, we're all the same board of conduct. And this way, you don't just send your problem right down the road. So, so every single day, we have new cases that are coming in. We have other cases that we're finishing out. We work throughout the year. So it's not like we get winter break or spring break or anything else. We're here working during those times, just like a lot of you are. And so we're here when you have those concerns, and it's always best if you let us know about those concerns the first time it's bothering you on something, because we can walk you through it and help get you in the right direction. And also then we can deal with the student a whole lot quicker than if we wait until 6 months down the line and say, yeah, this student was a real problem. And because sometimes that makes it more difficult for us to address. Okay. One of the things I know you're not going to like to hear is we can't always come back to you and tell you what we've done with a case. FERPA does kick into gear, and I know all of you are very well aware of FERPA. We try the best we can. If we've taken a student out of school, then we can let you know we took a student out. That student won't be back to your class at this time. We may not be able to tell you all the details of what happened, but we certainly can tell you that. We can let you know if we've placed a no contact directive, because sometimes you may have 2 students in your class and we've issued them, maybe they were in a dating situation, and we've issued them no contact directive saying, you're not to be speaking with each other. And so we might let the professor know, hey, please don't put them in a group together. And if you see that there's anything that's going on there, like one's waiting for the other to come out of the classroom, then please let us know, because we want to be as careful as we can be. Everybody's here to get an education, so we want to be as careful as we can not to disrupt that educational pattern, but we also need to address, my boss has a good saying that students come to college with their luggage and their baggage. So you never know what a student's bringing with them from their personal life or what's happening in their personal life once they get here. I don't know, I think I can safely say for these ladies that I have never met the parents of the bad influence kid. You know, so many parents when they're calling us also don't like the message that we can't speak to them without written permission from their child. And they want us to know that they sent them off to school here to get them away from all bad influences.
Oh.
And they may have been the bad influence, and they brought that with them. So, you know, and sometimes parents are aware of a lot of these behaviors, but they thought that their child would outgrow it once they got to college. And again, being instructors in classrooms, I know you see these behaviors. And a lot of times it's easy for a family to kiss those things off and say, oh, you know, that's just the way they are. They'll outgrow this. When they get away from these other people, they'll be so much better. And remember also that we're dealing with a generation that there may have already been a diagnosis of something like bipolar, and they're supposed to be on meds, but it's more socially acceptable when you come to college to self-medicate with marijuana than to actually take your medication, or to share your medication, or to take too much of it, or mix it with alcohol, or some of the other things that we see on a pretty regular basis.
Maybe we have to send those people to Colorado.
Well, you know, it's amazing how many of them I think are in for a very rude awakening, the ones who are getting medical marijuana cards now for some chronic ailment. And I'm thinking there's going to come a day when they're out in the workplace, they need to get insurance, and now they have to declare a pre-existing condition. And I'm thinking there comes a day when that happens. So, yeah, you know, we've gone to a tobacco-free institution, and yet it's amazing how many people think that they can still smoke on campus. And just so that you know, even though someone may have a medical marijuana card, they are not allowed to have it on campus, and certainly not allowed to smoke it on campus. And so students who use that as the excuse is like, you still can't have it here. You know, those are our rules.
Are you going to do more to enforce that smoking ban? Because it really feels like it's not working very well. You constantly see people smoking.
You know, it's funny, this is the first year that we've gone into that, and it's amazing how many times you'll be walking along and you'll see people who are smoking on the campus. My favorite is right across from where the police department is. So, but it's not against the law to smoke, and that's one of the tough.
Students smoking. I think who is smoking are those people that are doing construction. I think when you see all those cars parked, you know, with the construction, you know, then you see the cigarette, you know, butts. Students, I don't see any.
No, it is students too. Just look in that corner down
Yeah.
there. They're all smoking in that corner.
Go by PSF, in between PSF and the
Yeah, there's a
interdisciplinary building.
Well, I
I see
know
both the real and the electronic one.
Well, I know that for this first year, they wanted to do a gentler, kinder approach and just be reminding people for campus, kind of like with the no wheel zones, where you still see people whizzing by on their bicycles. But again, it's not nearly as bad as it was last year at this time. So, so I think they've tried to take a gentler approach. One of the things that we've actually done this year, though, is if a student has been asked several times not to smoke, especially like in our halls, and they're disregarding it, then that kicks into a code of conduct violation of failure to comply with a university administrator asking you.
That might be harder to do though.
It is. It's much harder to do. Yes.
He needs to leave early.
Do you have handouts?
Oh, certainly. Let me make sure these are going around. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Pass those.
So do you think, though, that starting this August, they might take a slightly tougher approach to enforcing the smoking ban?
I've heard talk that, I've heard talk that they're looking at getting tougher with that. Again, where the problem lies is the fact that it's not against the law. And so the police really can't get involved unless somebody assaulted somebody with their cigarette.
What about electronic cigarettes? Are they the electronic one?
No, even with the electronic cigarettes, we have asked folks not to have that. Hookah is another big thing on campus, and we're continuously having to ask students to shut it down, take it off campus, not have that here. And so, you know, again, I think we're going to see more and more where, and one of the things also that we've paid attention to is we're getting larger and larger as far as our international base of students. And so a lot of our international students are coming over already smoking. And so we've seen a large increase with international students where that's been an issue, especially within our residential halls. And so, so I know that that's something that we're trying to pay more and more attention to. So, but definitely if it's the same person over and over and it's being brought to our attention, then we are charging them under the code of conduct and bringing them in that way. What else do you want to know about our department, or, yes?
Well, this came about because of some online issues, and we seem to have, we're experiencing a lot of online issues that are specific to online, which are students acting out with emails, saying things that they wouldn't think to say face to face, and you know, it's upsetting, and we don't want that to happen. And so I wanted to, you know, it was interesting to know that we could actually have them removed from the class for being disruptive, as defined by the instructor. Now that student might be cussing out the instructor, and they're not technically disrupting other students, but I would still consider that disruptive behavior.
I would always say you should live and die by your syllabus and make it very clear, that's your domain. Make it very clear what your rules are of that domain. And there are some instructors that have really great syllabuses that are set up.
Can these be in there?
You certainly can. Matter of fact, you can, on the one page there is the link to the student code of conduct and stuff. I know instructors who actually have it in there as far as, and who are held by the student code of conduct.
Is having a link sufficient?
I think you need to also say it. You know, we support the Arizona Board of Regents Student Code of Conduct, and you will be held accountable.
You know, we've had some contradictory guidance over the years from higher ups who, for example, once they said only include the links. I think that happened
Right,
2
that
years
was
ago.
true, and we seem, it gets watered down. I mean, I wrote up a student code of conduct last year for some issues that were arising in online. I sent around, by the time it got back to me, it'd been completely stripped bare of any teeth.
You know, the online debate has been going on for quite some time because we grew so quickly with that online, and it's this virtual world out there, and how do you deal with that? Except we've got some really good rules already in place, like our computing rules. That definitely comes under the student code of conduct. The use of any of ASU's stuff, so if they're using their asu.edu address to be sending particular deals, where they're doing it through Blackboard or some of the others, we've got rules that are already in place. There's also some really great wording that's out there in reference to, and I can always send, I can send you across any of that Melissa Phelan had done from Herberger.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, let me send you over some wording that she
So look
had in.
at this number 20, you know, that's probably, we have something. You see, I think it's related to email or something like by electronic means.
I mean, I understand what they're writing is protected under the First Amendment, but it's highly inappropriate.
Certainly.
I mean, I could argue that it's borderline, assault.
Well, it's unwanted contact as well. And so one of the things that gives us teeth in order to do that is if you ever receive anything that, it doesn't matter if anybody else thinks it's okay or not, if you personally think that it's not okay, then respond back to that student and in no uncertain terms let them know this is not okay. You need to know that, that it won't be tolerated, that should you, moving forward, send me anything like this again, it will be reported to the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities. Here's their link, you're subject to their code of conduct. And let them know in no uncertain terms, because once you've given them that fair warning, then if they do it again, that gives us the teeth then to get involved.
What if they don't reply?
If they don't reply, one of the things that I always say is let our department know, because we can always set it up as an FYI, so in case they show up again, because most of the time when somebody's doing that online, they're going to do it someplace else as well. And so that way when we see it coming from someplace else, we have actually removed people from being able to take any classes with us, including online classes, because of behavior that way. Because you're absolutely right. People get on that computer and they forget that there are people on the other end of that. And it becomes, they forget about the filters that normally might be in place if they're face-to-face with someone. And they're so angry when they're writing things, and then they hit that send button without sitting back a moment. And so if you receive any unwanted emails, simply let them know this is unacceptable. It won't be tolerated. Should you do this again, you need to know, and you can let them know, you need to know I'm laying the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities. You don't have to tell them they have to do it again before you will. Just let them know that you'll let us know. You're welcome to shoot me an email with that. I'm happy to set it up as an FYI, or let me know about a student. I'll check to see if they've been on our radar for anything else. We actually have the wonderful world of Skype now, where we can hold meetings with students who aren't necessarily in the state. We can go so far as to shut off their access to things. So one of the things that we're just starting to do this year is if we have expelled a student, we're now giving them a date as to when all ASU, access to all ASU things will be shut off. In the past, we haven't done that. And, because you know, sometimes it takes a while to unravel everything that you might have going with the university. But we're now giving them a date telling them when their ASU.edu will be shut off, you know, that they won't be able to access anything else through there except what a citizen would be able to access. But so we can do a lot of things, but you have to give somebody the opportunity to know that it's unacceptable by your terms, and you have to give them the ability to screw up again if they're going to be dumb enough to do so, and then that gives us something more that we can go on to assist you with that. But we will do it. We won't shy away from it.
I think most students wouldn't even know any of these naturally. If there's a way to get them to read it and maybe agree that they've read it, maybe with a click button in their course or something,
I promise
less people would try some of the things they do.
When they enroll for the first time in university, they read this document and they initial it and they sign it, and that carries it through their whole undergrad, graduate
They
career.
do?
They should.
We have actually, I can't tell you the number of efforts that we make. We actually are there personally at orientation. We will be there for every single one of the, 56 orientations that are getting ready to start? We will be at all 56 of the orientations. We've actually gone so far as to put it on little flash drives for them. We make every effort we can to have that when they're, since most of them are supposed to be living in the halls, that very first week, matter of fact, I think that very first night or so, that first weekend that they're here, they have to go through a deal where they're going through all of that again with the hall staff. So we are making those efforts to get that, and pretty much what I tell students who come in my office and try to give me that I didn't know, it's, you know what, you had the same rules in high school. It's just now you're an adult and we really, really mean it. So, but we didn't go switching anything up. You couldn't have drugs or alcohol, and you weren't supposed to be cheating, and you weren't supposed to be bringing weapons when you were in high school. So, you know, it's not like it's a big mystery here either. And so, but I once had a student tell me that the day he came to campus and was moving into his dorm, that Mom and Dad were with him, and he was real glad to have them, especially when they were taking him to buy him all the little things for his room, until his roommates started showing up, and then he was ready for them to leave campus, and especially as his mom kept saying, now don't forget to do this, don't forget to do this. And he said they weren't gone 20 minutes when his phone rang, and he looked and he saw that it was his mother, and he made a very fateful decision at that moment not to answer the phone, because he realized he didn't have to face her at dinner that night. And so he could prolong, and maybe she wouldn't find out. You know, because we keep encouraging them that they are adults and that they're protected by FERPA, and maybe she wouldn't find out. And because I asked him specifically, why is your behavior so much different than it was in high school? I'm thinking your parents wouldn't have left you here or be paying for your college if they knew you were gonna act like this. And I thought it was pretty insightful that he picked up on where that behavioral change came, because he just realized there wasn't going to be immediate reckoning. And so this is something that we talk to students about. Another thing that we do with students is talk to them, and it's a tool you might use, about conduct checks. Conduct checks are background checks on students that will never just be sprung on them, but if they want to work on campus, if they want to do study abroad, get into law school, medical school, there are 100 different internships, 100 different reasons why a student may need to have a conduct check run. The university has a record retention period of 3 years past the last date of when they were supposed to get something done. So let's say that a student's behavior has been kind of chronic misbehavior, and I've placed them on a disciplinary probation period, meaning I've taken them out of good standing with the university. And during that time period, you know, I'm not their probation officer, they don't have to report to me, but if something else happens, certainly the sanctioning can be a whole lot more severe after that. So if that time period is for a year, then the retention time period is for 3 years after that. So if a student does something that warrants disciplinary probation in their first week on campus, they may have a disciplinary record their whole academic career here, or at least for their undergrad career. And that can start limiting them on things that they might like to do in the future.
And then if this is erased after 3 years. After 3
Yes,
years,
it's purged after that 3 years, it's purged. But let's say that they almost make it to 3 years and now something else happens, then all the rest of it's going to get reported too. And that's by law, we have to report that. So we have students who frequently contact us because maybe they're trying to do study abroad. And they know that we're going to report something, and they're demanding, you know, that we have to expunge their records. It's like, no, we don't. This is here. And it can start limiting you. So you need to be thinking about that now, because it's not just going to go away. By law, we have to report it, and you don't have to like it, but it's there.
You said one of your options was suspension.
Yes.
How long are they?
Our Dean of Students feels that we should never suspend anybody for longer than 2 years, because if we're going to say somebody has to be away longer than 2 years, then we may as well expel them.
Okay, I was just more concerned within the semester because
Usually, a suspension normally is going to be about a year's time period to give somebody the opportunity to get some things done, but it's not an automatic that if they make it through that 1 year that they get to come back, because if they didn't get the conditions for return done, it could be 6 years down the line, you know, because until those conditions are met, they're not coming back. But at a minimum, they wouldn't be able to come back for that year.
okay, so the semester is trashed then.
It can be, yeah.
Because
And
we have a 2-week policy here, and say if you suspend them for 2 weeks, they're done with us anyways for the semester.
Well, you know, there's another action that we can also take. It's called an interim suspension. We don't use this one lightly. It's when we feel that there is a potential for a safety concern to the campus community. And what we do is we take a student right then and there, we remove them from the campus, and we have 5 days in which to meet with that student. And, excuse me, got a dry tickle. If the student's behavior has been of such, we meet with them over at ASUPD. So we have a room over there that they'll let us use. And so we'll meet with them over there in reference to whatever the case is, and then a determination will be made from there. Will we lift the interim suspension and maybe let them be going back to class, but they can't move back into the hall for right now? Some of you may remember just, I want to say it was last semester, there was a pill factory over in Vista del Sol community. I mean, they were manufacturing a lot of pills over there. And so we interim suspended those students right then and there because of the safety risk to to the other students who were living in the area, and I mean, that would hit the news big time. And so, so there are times when we're removing them and they can't go to class, they can't, if they live on campus, we remove them from that. I've said before, it's kind of frightening sometimes what we can do in a matter of minutes in telling them, okay, now you're homeless and we're shutting off your SUN card and you no longer have access to campus dining facilities. And, you know, here's a date when you need to come in and meet with me. And we always try to meet with students quickly because we realize that we may be keeping them out of class long enough where they're just not going to be able to finish out the semester. And so our message to a student is, but normally it's a student who's delaying coming in to meet with us. Because usually it's a big enough thing that probably there's police involvement. So, so in those particular cases, we always let a student know that if we lift this and we allow them to go back to classes, it's still going to be up to the instructor to determine whether or not they meet the requirements. You know, like if they had too many absences before this happened and now they've been out for another week, we're not going to tell a professor you have to let this student back in. So we let a student know that that's something that they need to work with the professor on. What else do you want to know?
Do you guys have any concerns? I just wanted to know, oh, go ahead, Rose.
In previous semesters, especially at the start of the fall semester, we've observed individuals, students or otherwise, individuals posing as students, circulating clipboards in classes to collect information on behalf of third parties, acting as if this was the faculty checking attendance. Has this come to your attention? Have you done anything about that?
I haven't heard of that. You know what though, if you see that happening, let us know, because again, we always want to be concerned for students' privacy. And also the safety of your classroom's setting. And I think sometimes we can tend to, it looks so innocent that we tend to let some of those things go by instead of addressing it. And so that might be something that you want to address with the class. No circulating stuff from other things. If you want to do something like that, then do it outside of the classroom, but not here inside of the classroom. Because that way, I think sometimes when students are sitting in a classroom and somebody's circulating stuff around, they feel compelled to have to sign it, you know, especially in their freshman year. And so if you let them know, no, that's not okay, take it outside of the classroom and do that if you want, then those who really are uncomfortable by it have been, you know they can just walk away from it. So that's interesting though. I haven't heard of that happening, but I don't doubt it.
Well, these places, they don't put their identifying feet on the clipboard itself. There's nothing on there that identifies the culprit, if you will. There's no
What are
place
they
that-
asking for?
Well, in one case, we were able to figure out, because they actually cornered one of the individuals. It was some painting company. They were looking for students who wanted to get into house painting. You know, be like an independent contractor. But
That's like that Tempe 12 that always entices the young women to come out and dress scantily and be at different events and stuff, is the Tempe 12. Have you seen that?
And
So,
always the bathrooms, you know, they always have the different places.
Well,
I was like,
Telephone
yeah.
lines,
in a case like
and
that,
that's
I'm talking about
different.
cases where the students think they need to sign
In
it.
your class, yeah.
Because it's being sent around by a plant, a student, somebody who looks like a student. And they usually do this, like the 5 or 10 minutes before the professor shows up. So there might not be everybody in the room yet, but there's still quite a few. And so the student thinks, well, I better sign this. It just looks like, it's basically just a grid. You know, put your name and your email and your signature or something like that.
Yeah, you know, it just frightens me how often students will just give out personal information. Somebody they just met a few moments ago and they're putting their phone number into their phone.
Is this something that you address at the freshman orientation?
We certainly do. We address it quite a bit. I'm sensitive to it. My background, I came from a law enforcement background, And my line of expertise is in domestic violence, child abuse, and sex crimes. So my mind immediately goes to safety issues along these particular lines. And whenever I'm seeing somebody giving out personal information, I frequently chat with young ladies in reference to, you gave this guy who you just met by virtue of the fact that he's a student access to all your personal information, yet would you have gone down on Mill Avenue and just given it to a stranger? Well, no. Well, then why would you do it here? He's a stranger too, just in the guise of a student. You know, but again, you don't know this person yet. So again, we try to address that as best we can through a variety of different ways. You know, a lot of our job is preventative. Yes?
Oh, I had a student who was going to take a quiz one day, and her arm was in a sling, right? And she couldn't write with her hand, so she had to write with her left hand, and I couldn't read it. But the reason why her arm was in a sling was because a student on the same floor assaulted her, I think. You know, she showed her something, grabbed her arm like violently, like maybe almost pulled it out of the socket or something. And I asked her, did you go to the police? And I wanted to know because she told me that there was,
Sure.
you know, some sort of incident, and it was just given to the residence hall advisor, and they said they would take care of it. But to me, that kind of reminded me of like a Penn State situation where, you know, somebody knows something but then they don't follow through on it. What's our responsibility if you hear something like that?
I think if you hear something like that, again, pick up the phone and give us a call or shoot us an email and ask us to chat with you about something. It never hurts to ask about it. But I can tell you that within our halls, anything that happens in the hall, each of the CAs and the community directors and all the hall personnel, they write up a report on every single thing that happens that goes into this advocate system. Every single morning, staff and I go through every single report that came through that's happening. I even look at the ones that are happening on all the other campuses, because if there was police involvement, I order the police reports for all of those. And then if there was physical violence, one of the first things we do is we want to address the safety concerns first. So the perpetrator is going to get moved immediately and taken out of that situation. So we have rooms that are set up in different halls that are temporary facilities where we can place a student while we're taking a look. Then the student who may or may not have an injury, we're checking to find out, okay, do we need to get medical attention here? How do we need to go? We generally, we've called the police, but the student again has the right to say whether they want to file charges against that other person.
Well, because I had asked her, you know, could you call the police, and that she said to me, you know, I don't want to get the boy in trouble. You know,
That's frequent.
And then I told her, like, you know, if I was your father, I'd be very upset.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, and again, there are a lot of times that we're not going to wait to see if that other person wants it. We as a university take on that responsibility that we're calling the police to be involved. And then we're also making sure that the person who is the victim knows about counseling services. Kaylin Kahn, some of you may know her, she's the student advocate here on this campus, and each one of the campuses has a student advocate. And so she will reach out to that student as a victim of something and say, I understand there was an incident and I want to make sure that you know I'm here for support. So like if a student had to miss a class because of a doctor's appointment, because of something, then Kaylin can be that person who at least confirms that. Because I know, you know that you get a lot of excuses on a regular basis as to why people had to miss a class. But this way we can confirm it and let you know that yes, there really was something that happened, and that's why the student wasn't in your class. So we're surrounding the student who's the victim of something with support services and assisting them with whatever else needs to take place, and then we're addressing the inappropriate behavior with the other person, and we're removing them right away. So we've already had 3 of those today. And the day's not over. So yeah, it's something, something else that you may not be aware of that each one of the campuses has is something called SAC. SAC is the Student Assistance Coordination Committee. Can't say it all the time. It's a committee, it's a standing committee that's made up of a representative from counseling, disability resources, the provost's office, ASU Police Department, our Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, residential housing, trying to think who else is at the table. But all of these different entities are represented at the table. Generally, they meet once a week, but they can meet in a moment's notice depending upon what might be happening. And so all one of us has to do is say, I think we need to call a SAC meeting. And then they get everybody at the table so we can take that holistic approach. So there are times it looks like you may have called me and you may think that, okay, I'm only dealing with this, but all of this other stuff is happening behind the scenes as well. And that's why if you've got a student who's of concern that their behaviors are they're just making the hair on the back of your neck stand up. You know, sometimes you just know that a student's in distress. Let us know about that because, again, we can take that to SAC. We can see about doing that holistic approach of getting in front of that student before anything happens. Okay? I would strongly recommend that there are certain things that you don't ever say. Don't ever say this student is nuts. And the reason I tell you that is because students have a right to their files. And if you've put that in there, if you immediately say, I don't like what this student did, so expel them, it may come a time when we do have to expel that student, but if you've put it there, that student could come back at an appeal hearing and say that it was already preordained, nobody was listening to what that student had to say after that. And so I promise you that we've got a really good process in place here. Describe behaviors to us. This student concerned me because of this behavior, this behavior, this behavior. And then that gives us something to act upon that anybody taking a look at that file later on down the line can see where the concern is right off the bat. Okay. But if none of us, and I have a background in counseling as well as my law enforcement background, but nuts is not a clinical term. And even if it was, it could get all of us in so much trouble. So just be careful about how you're reporting something that's happened with somebody. And I always say, think of it as if it was your own child who something is happening with them in a classroom or wherever it is that they might be, and they're acting out. What kind of care would you want to be shown? You know, and not that that care has to excuse the behavior, but it explains the behavior. And so, and what we do every single day is what we call confrontation with care. We're in conflict all day long, but how we confront someone can make all the difference in the world as far as the safety to the campus community. And you know, for as large as we are, we've got a pretty safe campus. And just so that you know, there are a lot of eyes on everything that happens. So it's not just me taking a look at a case. It's a lot of people and an awful lot of support services that are in place on this campus, which is pretty good. Yes, ma'am?
You were supposed to tell us something about the kicking the shoes, you know, in the department. You know, how can you do something like that? Yeah.
Playing Dorothy and clicking the heels,
yes.
yeah. Like there's no place like home. Within your own department, it's always best to find out what their procedure is if you feel that you have a student who needs to be removed.
So who would know that? With Tracy? Yeah.
Well, usually we go to you. I mean, whenever there's a situation that arises, I immediately go to you and I go to Tracy and also Al and Fabio, but I immediately get you guys involved.
I think it's good to have us there, but don't forget you don't have to wait for us.
Right.
Because our process may take longer and you may need that student out now.
Well,
I come from the old school that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen, so be able to document what it is.
If it's immediately threatening, we haven't called the police.
Definitely. And something that you need to know, if you're calling the police, let's say you dial 911 on a cell phone, you need to stay on the line because that's gonna route to Tempe PD. But let them know that you're on the ASU campus and that, that you need ASU PD, and they're gonna put you in directly. On campus, it's 53456. And I have the numbers down on there for you for the different police departments. That immediately goes into their dispatch center, 24 hours a day. And so, and all the police cars here are equipped with the computers and everything, so that information's going out really quickly to officers while that dispatcher has you on the line in reference to what the situation is. I think it's always good to know what your departmental's policy is. And again, look to some of your colleagues in some of the other colleges to see what they're doing, what their route is if they have a disruptive student. Because some of the, like, I know Herberger has Heather Landis is the lady that we've dealt with over there. They have a really great internal policy in place in reference to if this behavior is of such, then, you know how you have grave grievance policies that are in place? You can also have disruptive student policies in place. And so, so you can do that and do that for yourselves. It's just a lot of schools or a lot of colleges feel funny about doing that because it feels like it's a big step. But if you're removing them from a class, it's a whole lot different than us removing them from the university. And so, and I think it's always better if the college handles that as opposed to us handling it, because it's your college. Okay. But certainly I think there can be those other conversations, because one of the other things that happens is all sorts of people start getting copied on something, and then next thing I know, remember one of the things we were dealing with, you've got everybody who's copied wanting bits and pieces of the information was like, whoa, wait a second, let me pull this one back down so that we can address this situation, because while I'm answering all of you back, I'm not having a chance to deal with this student. And so having a direct link or a chain of command, if you will, that's always important to know. Like Scott, who is your immediate supervisor?
Dr. Miller, Bobby Miller.
Okay. And so, and then who's above?
Dr. Albagas,
Okay.
the department chair.
And what is their take on as far as disruptive students?
Well, they certainly don't want them, but sometimes I feel like I'm not sure myself if we have a set policy, and that's why we try to use our gut here. If it's an obvious case where the student is physically or verbally abusive, I say call police, all right? If it's a case where the student's just acting out or acting odd, then we get you involved. And I've asked the instructors to use your instinct here. If you have a student who's just acting kind of oddly in any way, doesn't necessarily have to be toward you, keep an eye on them and let us know. We can always just get a dialogue going with you and your department early on, just in case.
You bet. And don't ever be afraid of that. We had someone earlier today who reported some behavior that I feel was very inappropriate on the part of a student. And then when we let that person know that, all right, you know, we're bringing that student in, we're going to be discussing this, started to back off going, well, now we're afraid of retaliation. Well, that's something we address with every student that we work with, because we realize that that could be a potential. But I'm telling you, after 8 years of doing this job, I can think of only once where there was retaliation, and it wasn't against a professor. It was with another student.
Yeah, it's always can happen. You know, when I sometimes meet my students as a servers in a restaurant, I always have to think quickly, could I give her a name? Or should I just...
I go far away from taking to restaurants.
Sometimes happen, I go to the Monty's or something, and I see the student is a server, and I was thinking about, well, she approached me, and then she was I don't remember what I gave her, but it kind of scared me a little bit, you know. Also happened, you know.
I always have to wonder
on
if it's
the
somebody
way
I
to
can kick
my
out of
school.
school.
Student wasn't happy.
So, you know, the whole name of the game is to have a safe campus community for that living and learning experience. One of the hard parts for me when I came into this job was that I expected to see certain things when I was a police officer, but this was not part of my college experience. And since all of us have been to college, I think with some of the things that we see now, it throws you for a loop. And I never would have cussed at a professor. I would have been too embarrassed to have my parents come swooping in. The words, I'm gonna call my attorney. I can't imagine ever thinking those words, yet alone saying them. But we're in a different world nowadays. And it's absolutely amazing some of the things that are happening with our students and on this campus. And how many of you had any idea that we deal with about 4,000 cases on this campus each and every year? Again, from some very minor things to some pretty serious things, but we have a good system that's in place. And we have a good support network that's in place. And your eyes and ears out there because you're dealing with these students every single day. So listen to your gut instinct because it's the one thing that doesn't lie to you. Okay? And how many times do we go back later and go, I knew there was something wrong, I should have. Just do it. It's nothing for us to at least take a look at it and say, okay, you know, here's how we can help you. Here might be a good way for you to start addressing this. Always happy to do that. That's what keeps this whole campus safe. Okay? So don't hesitate to call upon us. The things that I gave you as handouts, the code of conduct and the disciplinary procedures, the links to them are there. But trying to weed through it all and just get down to the specifics, well, here are the 26 prohibited behaviors.
And you were specific
That's
on
what
the
this,
web?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so I just broke this out specifically so that you could see that. And again, remember that there are categories of things that have to apply to all 3 universities. And I always say to use the comma in there as the word or. Such as on F15, which is a frequent one for us in reference to alcohol. It's laws that are governing alcohol or including consumption or distribution or unauthorized safe. It doesn't have to be all of it. And so, so that's the easiest way to read this. The other handout that I gave you is my personal cheat sheet in reference to telephone numbers for all of the different campuses, whether it's for counseling services, because counseling also has a counselor on duty, the counselor of the day. So if you just call over to counseling because you're concerned about a student, they'll be able to talk you through particular sets of circumstances, because not everything requires that we need to be involved. The rights and responsibilities, because just like on Tempe campus, where we're here for that, each of the campuses now have trained personnel who do what we do. So on that particular case, where the student was a downtown student, even though the behavior, we want to get them in front of where their college is so that they know that nothing is being hidden, you know, and so that the college can address a certain behavior and say, whoa, wait a second, you're part of this college and you represent us. And because before, if somebody from downtown came to the Tempe campus, it may have gone unnoticed on the other campuses. So now we always let our colleagues know, hey, one of your students was over here, they're enrolled at your campus, and then we determine who's going to handle it.
Well, I want to thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
This gives us some sense of what happens after. Sometimes when things get a little rough and we send it off.
It's
we're
scary
here
some
for the
days.
victory. And we know that there's FERPA laws, but this is great. This is very helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad. Would you like the rest of these for college?
Yeah,
Sure.
actually, yes.
Yeah, I think you've got work for another college.
Oh, there you go.
Let's put it in the